Yeah, thank you for taking the time and sticking it out here at 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. It's a different time of day, so hopefully you have an adult beverage or something within reach that you can kind of unwind with today. So yes, she kind of gave a little brief of my intro of who I am and what I'm all about. This is what I call my credibility slide. So you know I'm not full of crap and I'm just making design on Microsoft Word or anything like that. This is just a few of the pieces I've done both locally and globally. And if you want to talk design, that's another day, and you can always hit me up about that. But first and foremost, I'm your professional human being for the next hour. And I like to say this because at the end of the day, I am not a therapist. I'm not a doctor by any means. You can kind of, go on your own to find those professional sources, and I highly encourage you to if you need additional help. But for me, I'm just a human being. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit about my story and how I did end up here. For myself, I come from the exotic land of Pennsylvania. That's where I started off. And I lived in Los Angeles, California for 6 years. I was working in the music industry while I was there. And needless to say, that's a 24/8 job. It takes a lot out of you. And I had grown up in a sort of household where, number one, I was working since I was pretty much 15 years old. So I thought the hustle, the grind was cool. I thought that that equaled my success. And again, working in an industry that was just so nonstop, I thought I was doing great. I'm like, yeah, of course it's normal to chug a Monster energy drink maybe another one later in the day. Of course it's normal for me to get a few hours of sleep. It doesn't matter because I'm hustling. And I think a lot of us can kind of fall into that right now as well. But again, while I was there, I was just going. And in addition, had come from a household where we didn't really talk about our emotions. We didn't, God forbid, didn't talk about therapy. There was such a stigma behind mental health and wellness that you only know until you know, right? So for me, I kind of hit rock bottom about 10 years ago, around the time I was starting my business and working in this industry, where I noticed that to cope, I was drinking more. I was drinking almost every single day. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't really drink it in general. I was not wanting to sit alone with myself. If I started to feel down, I turned to friends. If I started to feel weird, I would go out. Like I did anything I could to avoid just sitting. So that's a little bit about kind of like part of my journey. And I took this big inhale, exhale, and was like, I need to change something. This is not healthy. And so that's when I started to go to therapy. And I want to preface also this talk by saying that I'm going to be using words today like stress, anxiety, depression. That doesn't mean that that's what it is for you. Everyone's journey is very, very different. This is kind of a choose your own adventure sort of talk we're going to do in this part 1 and part 2 series. So just take that with a grain of salt whenever I'm using words like anxiety. Doesn't mean you have to be suffering with it yourself, but this is just what worked for me. So like I said, I hit rock bottom. I'm like, what am I going to do? Started going to therapy, started to be more active and athletic, doing sports and different things that were helping me get these stressors out. And those were some of the key points that I still take on to this day. Am I healed? Absolutely not. It's a daily thing that I'm working with. Just last week, I had an anxiety attack and it was not pretty. Let me tell you that much. I'm not a pretty crier. So, but it's just part of it now. I've learned that to roll with the punches, so to speak, and to also just find what I can control in this situation. And we'll get into a bit more about that a little later on. But yeah, so I got certified in mental health first aid, like we had mentioned, and that was really a turning point for me in getting to teach things like this. So we are going to start with a big inhale and exhale today. This is a really quick, anywhere, anytime breathing exercise you can do. For me, when I'm entering, let's say like a meeting or something, this is the guy that I do beforehand. It helps keep me grounded. It helps just like bring me back to whatever craziness I was having to deal with throughout the day. It's also a great way to start and end your day. So whatever way it looks like for you, I highly encourage you to start practicing a breathing exercise of some sort or whatever meditation that looks like for you. So I use this little Pac-Man character to kind of guide you through these, like the step-by-step rhythm of the breathing exercise itself. This is also terrific if you do have children. It's a great way to get them involved. So we're going to do a sample of the breathing exercise, and then you can take it at your own pace, do it in your own world. If you want to sit here and just do this the entire time, please, please do. If you're like, I'll get to this later, that's okay too. Again, choose your own adventure. So let's do an inhale for 4. Hold that for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Let's do one more. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. And rinse and repeat as needed. So like I said, if you guys want to stay here with it, do that for the rest of the course. It will be here at your beckoning call. So when it comes to our mental health and wellness, again, even from what I realized where I thought, oh, I steer my own ship sort of thing. I don't need help. I don't need this. I don't need whatever. At the end of the day, there were outside factors that were controlling me more than I even thought. So health truly is what we think about, what we say, what we do, who we're surrounded with. You become all of these things. And that kind of noise isn't going anywhere. So, in terms of where you go with it or what that really looks like for you in your life, I wanted to share a few quick stats just to kind of go over the fact that at the end of the day, mental health isn't an age constraint. Everybody is working through this. Right now, I'm working on a children's program to do this so that they can start younger and younger, and it becomes part of their verbiage. But people who are older, we've seen increase in antidepressants being used. There has to be a correlation between these things. So like I said, a few quick stats just to kind of share. So mental health disorders are the most common cause of disability. Like I said, this isn't an age factor. This isn't a race factor. This isn't a gender factor. This is just like what it is. So a study in 2015 showed that 1/3 of all of US adults will be affected by an anxiety disorder in their lifetime. So again, it kind of becomes this conversation of you are not alone. And again, it doesn't have to mean that it's super extreme. It could be daily anxiety that you're facing, daily triggers that you're facing. And I guarantee you probably have a few that will pop up throughout this. Adults in the US also spend an average of 2 to 4 hours per day tapping, typing, and swiping on their phones, which I can only imagine what those numbers are looking like now. So again, we're connected in this digital space too with everything that is constantly evolving, constantly changing. Whatever that looks like for you in your life, it could be that you're facing imposter syndrome because you're on social media a ton and you're comparing your life to other people's. We'll get into a little bit more of things that you can do to maintain this and again, put it in your own control. But it's just some kind of food for thought throughout this because of recent events where you might find these things filtered in. And again, another crazy fact that I found about suicide being the 10th leading cause of death in the US. That's approximately 43,000, and that was in 2014. So I encourage you to look up your own research as well on these statistics or follow accounts that do. There's some really great Instagram accounts that you can actually follow that kind of help guide you through this and learn more statistics as they're coming. So because of all this, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. And one stat that I found incredibly interesting is that a study done at Harvard showed that 47% of our brain is always working. It's always on to the next thing. And it's because we're not taking this moment of stillness. So when is the last time that you took a moment to do absolutely nothing? Nothing was in front of you. You weren't thinking about the future. You weren't thinking about what you were going to eat for dinner. You weren't thinking about what happened 5 years ago. When's the last time you took the time to sit and do absolutely nothing? Especially in a time like this. Again, we have media coming at us from every angle. So there's going to be noise, right? Prepare yourself for that. You have your moments of nothing, but you're also going to have these moments of noise. So how can we start to navigate it? What does it look like in our daily life where, okay, we know the noise is coming, where can we control it? Because a huge reason that right now, even as a culture, we are having a very hard time accepting change that's in front of us is we're a culture built on structure. I can guarantee most of us, we kind of grew up with this thought of you go to school, you get a job, you get married, white picket fence, you throw in the kids, boom, you're done, bow on top. Not having these sort of structures in place, it sends us awry. And that should be a no surprise, right? We are just very much used to our systems. We are very much used to what we like and what we know. As soon as there's something that's like stranger danger in a way to our feelings and our emotions and our mental space, that's when the alarms start going off. So we're going to do a quick writing exercise. I hope if everybody has a pen and paper with them. And I want you to write a note to yourself in this exact moment. It can be anything. Just write it out. And you're more than welcome to share within the chat, at the table, or in here in general. Feel free to share, but take a few minutes here, just like 1 or 2 minutes, and write a quick note to yourself. Okay, and just wrap up and we'll start moving on to the next thing. But like I said, if anybody wants to share what they wrote in the chat, feel free. Something else that I want you to think of throughout this part 1 of everything is, what do you want to learn? What do you want to gain out of this for yourself? So with all of this in mind, of this note to yourself, not the note to 5 years down the road, not a note to your past self, but the note to yourself right in this exact moment, what does that start to look like? So, you know, like I brought up in the first part with the breathing exercise, if you wanted to sit there and stay with that this entire time, awesome, cool, do it. It's you, it's your life, it's your journey, do it. And especially in this world where we're living with a ton of marketing coming at us, don't believe everything you see. And also make sure you have a divide so that you don't fall into thinking that you need to be what you see. So that might be, oh, I keep seeing this girl, she's doing a 30-day yoga challenge. Good for her. That's awesome. It doesn't mean that it has to work for you. You may see ads of like, drink green juice, go to Bali, and then suddenly your mental state is going to be crystal clear. Not always true for everybody. You really need to find what works for you during this. Oh, and awesome. It looks like we got a share. So the note was, be patient with people around you and don't take everything so damn personally. Amen. I take a lot of things personally, and it's something I've been working on, but it's so great if we can, again, start to just make this an individual thing and shut out all the outside noises of it. Thanks so much for sharing. And yes, patience too. I think we all need a little more patience these days. And from this realization of whatever you're gaining or whatever you're wanting to gain for yourself, daily little practices like this, take what you need. Even if that means you print off a page like this and you literally rip it off the paper every day when you get started, hang it on your bathroom mirror, whatever it looks like. Or even if it isn't this physical contact of having something to rip off, although it is super satisfying, writing it out. I encourage you to do stuff that involves either writing or having a tangible piece that you can look at. Because again, we're part of our surroundings, right? We're part of whatever we're taking in. And if we can, the one thing we do have control over could be our environment, make it one that you're going to want to enjoy what you're seeing. So these are just examples of kindness, love, gratitude, rest, hope, patience, strength, all these little things. And you can customize this to yourself. Again, it's a great exercise if you have children as well. And you let them kind of fill in some of these of what they need that day. They might write something down like a snack, which I need new snacks too. But, you know, make it so that people in your circle too, if you're living under a roof right now with a family, have them engage in this conversation as well. So this conversation of stress and our relationship with it, how can we start to change that piece of the narrative? this is where the shift in the mindset comes. Suddenly you become a little more mindful of things that start bothering you. Again, great writing exercise of just writing down things that you may notice trigger you. Maybe, especially now, the girls and I were talking about Zoom calls right now and how we're feeling a little overwhelmed by them. So for myself personally, it's like I notice if I have more than 3 Zoom calls in a day, I'm pretty irritable. So I notice that trigger for myself and I take it away then. I take it away so that it doesn't even have to happen. And I can manage it at 2 Zoom calls or 3 Zoom calls. So how can you start to approach, again, the stress or what's in front of you from a place of mindfulness, awareness, and then gratitude too. So this little funky pinball machine kind of shows you that if you get bumped around, maybe instead of automatically having a knee-jerk reaction of frustration or, just overall like aggression or anger, anything from a bad side, how can you start to turn it into a positive of things like love and gratitude and hope? So that brings us to the emotion wheel. So the human can experience around 34,000 different types of emotions. This is not a black and white situation. It's more than 50 shades of gray situation. We have a lot in front of us. And part of your own journey is going to be realizing how you can use your emotions to work through it to achieve other emotions too. Sorry, I lost my track of my notes there. Speaking of technology. So we do have our primary emotions of love, fear, anger, sadness, surprise, and joy. But there's a few golden rules that we can kind of pull away from this to kind of help guide us. Because like I said, 34,000 is a lot to think of. So a few of these golden rules: learn to acknowledge and attend to your emotions. That's first and foremost. Like I mentioned, I came from a household, we really didn't talk about them. I have a lot of friends who grew up similarly. And we've talked about how it's like, man, as soon as you open the door and let somebody else know how you're feeling, then they're more open to sharing their story too. That's kind of how I got started. I joke that I'm just a loudmouth who's willing to share my story. And because of it, I've seen other people open up to me. Or like today, like sharing in the chat, like how you're feeling. Oh no, and I'm missing, so sorry guys, I was covering the chat, so I missed the other responses. I love it. But yeah, just acknowledging that the feelings are there and the emotions are there, and then attending to them. That's number one. 2, becoming curious and patient with them. So we mentioned patience earlier. It's like you need to have patience within yourself too, not just your surroundings. This isn't an overnight success story, despite what social media is telling you or anything on TV may tell you. This is a day by day, a second by second situation. So again, talking about those emotions, showing real emotion to other people, that kind of comfort level, just like if you would go to therapy or talk to maybe your mom or something like that, whoever is close in your life that you feel like you can open to, start carrying that into other relationships. Learning to accept that you have different emotions. It's okay to feel a little all over the place sometimes, especially in a time like now. And then changing your emotions, like I said, with these other emotions. So here's our second writing exercise that we're going to do really quickly. This is kind of like I was tying in before, a way for you to notate your triggers. So if you start with a simple sentence, and you can kind of massage it to whatever works for you, but I like to do, I don't like when blank, that means I need to blank. So it could be, I don't like when I'm alone and feeling down. That means I need to find a sense of community, or maybe find a friend to reach out to. So take a few minutes here, and you can write down as many things as you want in the next minute or two. And just write down maybe why are you feeling, like what are you feeling? What is causing the feeling? How does your body signal you in that as well? I know for me with my anxiety, I start to get a little overheated. My heart rate is just like through the roof. So paying attention to things like that, getting all the senses involved. And then also in the outcome and the remedy that you find, what are boundaries that you need too? So again, take like a minute or two and just fill in these blanks. Take another 30 seconds. And again, feel free to share your answers. I'm reading through the ones from the last exercise. They're really great. Thank you all for sharing. Okay, start to wrap up any of the last few notes that you're taking right now. And again, as human beings, we are very much used to having a job, having a project, whatever that looks like. So when giving your feelings and these emotions and your stressors a job as well, it suddenly is a situation you have the control over, which is I often think people sometimes forget, especially if you're really stressed, you're overwhelmed, maybe a coworker of yours is really stressed and you're kind of taking on that energy too. Same thing with anyone in your life that you may be experiencing. So you are the captain of your ship. You know, you can control how you steer, whether it's to or from these different situations. So give your emotions a job, give your stressors a job. And suddenly, I actually do have control here. Somebody, Olivia, she shared a quote, feelings are just visitors, just let them come and go. I love that. Same sort of thing. It's like, okay, I can control what I let in and I can control what I let out. And this is going to help us as we begin to identify. It is going to help us avoid things like, oops, we're on the wrong screen, like burnout. This was a definition that I thought, man, just really hit the nail on the head in so many ways. The International Classification of Diseases Handbook defined burnout as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So the fact that they even use the verbiage successfully managed says it's manageable. That gives us an option that is actually manageable. A January 2020 survey that came out, they surveyed 7,500 full-time employees about burnout. 23% of those workers said they feel burned out more often than not. An additional 44% reported feeling burned out sometimes. So that's 2/3 of a full-time employee of workers who are feeling burnout. That's pretty astronomical. And in this short amount of time, you know, we've covered already quite a bit. I want to give you a few things that you can practice right now, like, or tomorrow, whenever you feel like it. Like I said, your own journey, do you. But these are a few things that you can practice with all of these thoughts in mind of what we just kind of went through. So you're practicing your awareness. Suddenly, like I said, you're like, oh, that bothers me. How can I now put that in control? Oh, I realized I'm feeling pretty sad about X, Y, and Z. What can I do about X, Y, and Z? And taking some of what you wrote in your last writing exercise. Listen to music, comedy, something that brings you joy, working other parts of our brain. I used to work with a music nonprofit that talked about the effect and correlation of house music, EDM music, the stuff with like bass, basically. And that could be also like acoustic music too. But there's been studies that were done that show our brain being able to focus on something else automatically is helping our dopamine levels, which is pretty freaking cool. Saying something positive about today, again, that's practicing gratitude. That's you waking up and instead of being like, oh, I'm out of coffee or whatever, it's like, okay, what's something else I could substitute? Or does this give me a reason to try a new recipe? Taking social media out of your routine. And when I say social media too, it doesn't even need to be that you're on Instagram or Facebook. It could even be LinkedIn. It could be your emails that you're getting. I know at the beginning of the year, I always try and kind of do a spring cleaning of the emails I get, where I'm like, oh, why am I getting emails from this company? I haven't purchased anything from them in years. They don't serve me anymore. So taking time to do things like that, again, that kind of falls under this window of social media. I said this in my last talk and I'll say it again. Normally in person, I would give out Play-Doh to everybody and we'd be playing with it right now and kind of like using it as our stress ball. But you can, like I said, grab your kids' Play-Doh if they have it laying around. It's a super cheap an affordable alternative of like a stress ball of some sort, but finding something that kind of like does help you if you're feeling anxious. I know for me, at least, that's a huge one, is having something almost like a fidget spinner of sort to kind of get it out. Drinking water, it's so old school, but it works. And we'll get into more of like the nutritional aspect of things in part 2. Again, practicing gratitude, especially right now, finding online communities to meet like-minded people, like events like this, where you can actually interact, which is super, super cool. But finding these online communities to find people that are in your wheelhouse. You may not have that as a home option. If you're like me, I live alone. So right now, online communities are my BFFs. And it also helps you learn from other people too, who may be going through those similar struggles. It doesn't have to be related to your mental health, but it could be something that you're passionate about, and finding people who are common in that practice. And then additionally, you're gaining strength and learning more about them. Taking a walk in nature, AKA fresh air, just feeling grounded again, getting out of your own space. I know, especially as somebody who's already worked from home, and now we all kind of are, that being in that space so much, getting the fresh air, even if it's just a walk around the block, a walk up and down the street, whatever it looks like, highly, highly encourage you to do it. Calling your insurance provider for a list of their behavioral health counselors to have. Again, I try and make pretty much anything that I do to be free or easily accessible to people. These kind of rules that are shot to us, again, via marketing of you need to do yoga, you need to drink green juice, you need to go to Bali on a silent retreat, that costs money. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not rolling Scrooge McDuck style in gold coins over here. So having other affordable options, which luckily more and more companies are starting to do, and I will share a few of those resources that are free or very cheap. Investing in your rest and limiting caffeine. Another part of what I realized when I was in this kind of like hustle porn culture of go, go, go all the time is that I was drinking so much coffee, more than I ever have in my life. And I never took time to rest. And it's crazy how much a good night's sleep can do for you. But there's also coffee alternatives. Like I said, if it's a weaning process off of things like that, even in this, journey that you're taking. So finding little baby steps to it. This doesn't all have to be cold turkey. Practicing positivity, which ties in again with the gratitude, and then asking for help if you need it. Like I said, I'm not a certified therapist by any means, but my door is always open if you'd like to talk. And additionally, there's a ton of now text lines that are available. There's a ton of online options available if you can't find them within your own community too. This is another quick 5-minute mental health checklist. So taking things from that last slide and taking things from everything we've been talking about today, this is another perspective to put it into. So if you're realizing, hey, maybe I'm in a funk today, I'm irritable, whatever it may be, taking 5 minutes, you don't even have to take 5 minutes with this. You could take 30 seconds and checking in with yourself. Am I getting enough sleep? Oh, maybe I'm really irritable because I had 3 hours of sleep. That could have something to do with it, and starting to track that as well. Have I spent time outside in the fresh air? Like I said, getting back to feeling grounded. Have I moved my body today? That could be a simple stretch, like stand up from your desk, do a simple stretch. And again, we'll get more into detail with that in part 2. Same thing, have I had enough water? That can also tie in with food, just your general nutrition as a human being. For myself, I'm guilty of being pretty terrible with this one. I survive on a lot of handfuls of pretzels and things of that nature. Have I spent too much time on social media? Again, paying attention to what you're taking in. And then have I connected with somebody I love? Having that kind of emotional connection with another person is just leading it to, a better place already. So now what? I'm throwing a ton of information at you. Now what? So I broke this down into categories of how you could identify and pick a persona. So again, we're choosing our own adventure here. We are taking the route from there. So these are a few suggestions based on the persona that you pick of things that you could do today, this week, whenever. So the social butterfly, you're in the digital space a lot for work. You're in marketing maybe. You're having to be at your computer a lot. You enjoy a company of others. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're an extrovert, but you do like having people around you. You're always networking. You're just always on to the next thing. You might be the leader of your friend group too, because you are the social butterfly. So a few things from this that you could try: a digital detox, setting boundaries for yourself with your phone, turning it on do not disturb mode, even little things like that. It now allows you to have a separation from it, especially if your work is involved in the digital space. Practicing alone time, getting comfortable with just yourself and how that starts to look. Practicing the breathing exercise that I gave, creating a routine that involves all of these things too. So if you are a structured person, and this kind of ties into all of these personas, but you are a structured person, you like the routine, because again, we're human beings. Okay, how now can you make your mental health part of the routine? Suddenly, it doesn't feel like this overwhelming thing if in my routine I have, oh, we're going to do the breathing exercise as soon as I wake up today before I touch my phone. Simple as that. And then, like I said before, checking in with the accounts that you follow, your emails that you're getting, starting to take control of the situations that you do have at hand. We have the business woman / man. So same sort of thing. You're always hustling. You're always on the move. You're drinking a lot of caffeine. You don't have balance in your life. You're always multitasking. That's a huge one. We're all multitasking, it feels like, all the time now. So again, try this instead. Schedule breaks. Actually make it part of your work schedule where it's showing up in your Google Doc that you're taking a 5-minute walk. Or again, whatever that looks like for you. Having a dedicated office space, especially now where we're all kind of under one roof with our work, having a divide. So for me, for example, I don't bring my laptop to my bed. My bed is where I sleep. It's where I rest. It's where I unplug. I never work from bed. Some people do that as well with like maybe the couch in the living room. That's like where they spend family time. So learning to create these sort of boundaries for yourself and your work. Disabling notifications. So maybe having just your phone set for emergency calls only, turning off the little red bubble that pops up. There's a reason they make your notifications red. The psychology of red, alert, alert, something new, check it out. If you turn that off, suddenly you don't really want to look at your phone as much. There's nothing urgent to look at. Less caffeine. Like I said, there's a ton of alternatives for it. And then setting boundaries, not only for yourself, but the people within your life as well. And this kind of falls into the parent and spouse realm as well. So right now, even if you aren't married or have children, but you have roommates, it doesn't have to be even to the regard of marriage. You're having other people around, you're having other schedules to juggle, you're having different energies to kind of work with. It's not just you anymore. So this might look like, yes, juggling schedules, balancing life with relationships. So having this divide again of work and pleasure. You're running on E, you have a lack of me time. You don't have a lot of time to yourself. So try this instead. Set some new rules and boundaries. If that is that you work in a certain office space and whoever is in your household can't come to you between this time and this time, do it. Make some rules. Scheduling alone time, again, putting it into your schedule that you are unplugging whatever way that looks like, whether it's you don't take phone calls during that time, you don't socialize at that time, you're just taking time to kind of be with yourself. And then practicing things like writing a note to yourself and how you feel in that moment. Open communication with the household. So encouraging others to kind of talk about how they're feeling too. You create this own little community within or under one roof. Finding online communities, like I mentioned before, and then practicing the breathing exercise. So again, kind of pick your persona. Next week, if you tune in again, we're going to dive into these even more and kind of see, okay, you've identified your persona. Here are a few things you can practice with it. Where have you come even in a week's time? So again, these are, this is the good stuff. These are some free resources and guides and books and podcasts that you can tune into. And one that I actually forgot to add, which is so sad, is I myself released a text line that I'll send out in like an email to everybody later. But yeah, these are just a few really quick, easy ones that kind of apply to everybody. They don't really have any sort of boundary. I apologize in advance. I curse a lot in my personal brand. So a lot of these say like unfuck your brain and stuff of that nature. Just, you know, just roll with that for a sec or find something that works better for you. But yeah, these are all for you guys to have. They'll get sent out. So don't worry about like frantically writing them down. So now I'll take a little bit of time for questions. You guys can throw them in the chat and I'll kind of check in with them. I'm like 80 years old learning this platform as we're going. So if it takes me a second. But yeah, fire away. Does anybody have any questions at all? And I'll also put up, here's my contact information. If you do have something that pops up later that you'd like to get to, you're more than welcome to always email me. And on my website, sorry, one more thing. On my website, I also have a list of resources. I have previous talks and things of that nature too at remickz.com. So question came in, any suggestions on the best places to find like-minded online communities? Great question. So there is Meetup, which they have a very, very specific groups that I've noticed. And they've kind of always had an online kind of base with it going. So I haven't been on since quarantine, but I can only imagine that they're finding new ways to do it. Facebook as well. Personally, for me, Facebook has been pretty big. Same thing with LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a surprising amount of niche groups that you can find. But Facebook for me is kind of my bread and butter. It's very interactive, a lot of different age groups. And again, it's like you could find, I don't know, the I Love Corgi Club, it feels like. And then you could also find one that's more business related. So just type in a good old search bar there and that's pretty good as well. And then LinkedIn is more of the business related stuff. Next question I got, what's the best way to bring up practices like this with a coworker or partner? Have me talk to them. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I would. If they really want to, I would. But I would say, maybe little things like sharing articles that you find interesting and engaging in a conversation that way. I did that in a past relationship where I was really struggling with my anxiety and my partner did not understand even the definition of it in any means. And so I started sharing articles about anxiety and about stress I was feeling and just kind of got some feedback with it from him. I wanted to kind of see how he would react to it. And then it led us to more open conversations where I felt comfortable talking about it. Oh, awesome. There's Q&A tab. Thank you. So I would say sending articles, maybe even if there's an event like this again, inviting them to do it with you. That's super helpful as well, because then it's like you're not going in and alone. You're not throwing them into the water and saying, hey, I want you to think about your mental health and wellness. It is more of a group activity. And the Q&A one I got, how much time on social media is too much? I need to use it to promote my brand online and use it to relax as well. Yeah, and I've been having that struggle as well. I don't know if there's a golden number, so to speak. I think that it really, again, it kind of depends on your lifestyle. For me, one practice that I started was I don't look at my phone when I first wake up because I know I'm going to be on it for work. I only check like my emails in the morning at my computer, and I only go to social media after I've looked at my emails. So I almost made like a new schedule out of my social media. And a key point to think about with social media too is you don't work for it. It works for you. Again, you are steering your ship. So how can you control what you're intaking to make it just, not feel like, oh, you're the little puppet on the string. And instead it's just another part of your life to make it better and make it easier. So I don't really have like a set number, but I would say just like it comes to nutrition and balancing out how much protein you get versus carbs versus sugar, kind of breaking it up. I think that maybe not binging on it too, just not doing too much all at once, even though I get it, like for work, you kind of got to be on it and in that world. Somebody suggested setting up alerts for time spent on apps. Absolutely. That's another great one. How do you get a friend or partner to actually ask for help versus internalizing their emotions? And that's a tough one. I feel like, in the resource slide that I had, there's a ton of free numbers that you can access, like within Colorado, that even if they don't feel comfortable talking to you, you could say, hey, maybe I noticed that you were feeling a little down, or like you seemed a little off. Is everything okay? Opening up that door of conversation. If they still don't want to talk about it, then, allowing them another path that makes them feel comfortable, sharing resources maybe that you found that helps, staying away at first as well from titles that are too much in the mental health and clinical route I found is really helpful, because again, at the end of the day, we're human beings, and it's more approachable when you come at it from that angle. If you're still noticing it, then that's when it could actually help if you do some additional research into whether it's your own therapist or if you're taking a route with that and asking them for that advice too. I know that's not like the best answer to the question, but let me see. I think that was it. Great points. This is all really, really good. Well, if there are no other questions, like I said, there's my contact info. Hit me up. Let me know of anything else that you may need, or maybe that you want for next week's talk. If you're joining us for that as well, we'll be here at the same time. And yeah, I'll have all of this shareable for you guys too. You can go to my website as well, but this will be the updated version that you guys specifically get. And in preparation for next week too, just make sure that you're practicing these exercises we did today, and think about the persona and what you want to carry into next week. And then we'll kind of do a check-in there. So I hope that you guys can join next week too. And if not, like I said, always feel free to reach out to me.